Hi, welcome to Talking Books and Stuff, the program that talks all about books and writing and stuff. Here's your host, Dennis Rimmer.
And welcome back once again. This is Talking Books and Writing and Stuff, where we talk about books and writing and all sorts of other stuff. Today we're talking about writing and books and hockey and all sorts of other stuff with Clint Malarchuk, the cowboy goalie. But before we get into that, if you've enjoyed our podcasts, please click on our Patreon link. That's Patreon, Patreon, and look for Talking Books and maybe give us a bit of a hand there financially. It would be much appreciated. So, that's over with now, and today we have with us Clint Malarchuk from down south somewhere in Nevada, we'll say. So, Clint, with the pandemic and all that stuff that's going on yesterday, today, and probably for the next few months, how are you and your household holding up?
Oh, it's been kind of a rough run. I haven't been able to work since, because of my book, I do public speaking. And so since COVID started, I've been pretty much shut down. So there's the typical financial stressors, anxiety, insomnia, depression. But I keep telling myself I'm certainly not alone. I did have a bout with COVID myself, and it was not to be taken lightly. I was very, very ill for 2.5 weeks, and I'm over it now, but I'm still my energy levels are pretty low. So it's a tough one. So I encourage people just take all precautions and stay COVID free if possible.
What do you tell people who say, "Oh, it's a hoax," or "It's just the common cold," or how do you handle those people?
I probably because of isolation, I don't have to handle those people. I don't, my contact with people is very limited right now. But I don't hear much of that. I've heard it, but not as much. I think people, for the most part, really take this serious. I mean, people are dying from it. People, like I explained with my situation, it was a tough illness, and it wasn't fun. There was a period there where I slept for 3 days and 3 nights straight. The only time I get up is to go to the bathroom, and that's a lot of sleeping. I had all the symptoms, the cough, the aches, the pain. I had some vertigo. It was not to be taken lightly. So it's no hoax, believe me.
No, I fully understand it. Our son is working at a special care home in Regina, where they've had a horrendous COVID outbreak, and he's garbed up and gowned up and all that stuff. And he said they have 2 or 3 residents die each day from it. They've had to have the fire department come in to help them out. He's working 12-hour days and doesn't know when that's ever going to end. And it's the real thing. And if someone such as yourself, young and healthy, can get it, then anybody can. But getting away from COVID for a time, I want to tell you I'm making notes here with my official Quebec Nordiques pencil and sipping coffee from my Montreal Canadiens mug, wearing my Ottawa Senators underwear with my Vancouver Canucks slippers. So
it's safe to say you like hockey.
Yep. And I was a goalie as well. And I quit because it's too nerve-wracking. I could never get into it to enjoy it the way you should, just to be in the moment. But speaking now with Clint Malarchuk here, and talking about hockey and other things that we'll get to. So going back, you grew up in Alberta, Grande Prairie, Edmonton area, is that right?
Yeah, I started out in Grande Prairie, and that's where I consider hometown. But I did spend a lot of time in my teens in Edmonton, and that's where I played most of my youth hockey.
So when did you decide that being a goalie was your position, and why?
Well, Well, that's some people are drawn by the equipment, and some are drawn by the isolation of a team sport. There's different reasons. Some are drawn to the position because they get stuck in there because they're the worst skater on the team. So there's reasons. Mine's that's an easy question for me. My father was a senior league hockey goaltender. Played with no mask up in the Peace River hockey area. And then my older brother, 7 years older, was a goaltender too. So, of course, looking up to them was, I was very drawn to do what they were doing.
It's a family tradition, as Hank Williams Jr. would say. So
that's right.
When did you, as a hockey player, goalie, kind of start to realize that, hey, maybe I can make a go of this hockey thing?
Well, it was always a dream, of course, like most Canadian kids. It's what I was passionate about, and I wasn't very academic. In fact, I really struggled in school, and school caused me a lot of anxiety. And that being said, the greatest times that I ever had were on the ice and freedom from that anxiety as a kid. And I think I was probably about 13 or 14 when I started to excel and be pulled up to leagues higher than my age group. And of course, like I said, Canadian kid, it was always my dream or fantasy to play in the NHL. But that's when I was very passionate about it. I mean, I ate, drank, and slept hockey. So even at the very young age, and so I guess it's all I ever thought about, to be honest with you.
These days, they're saying that some of the kids, they play too much hockey year-round. Did you do other sports like in the summertime or even in off days in the winter?
Yeah, because in the summer, the indoor rinks kind of shut down, and, of course, the outdoor ice is melted. So we didn't really have that choice of, hey, do you want to play year-round like they do? It's such a year-round, like a lot of sports for kids are year-round. They pick one sport and they go with it. So I played baseball, boxing, and in my teens I started to rodeo, and so I did have my summertime sports that I was definitely athletic minded, and so I'd like to play sports. So that being said, hockey was my passion and my favorite sport, but I did enjoy other sports.
Speaking of souvenirs, like I say with my Nordique's pencil, do you have any special, or when you were a kid, were there any kind of things like that lying around? Sweaters, hats?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, hockey cards, used to collect them, and it certainly back then there wasn't the influx of all the media and things that kids and even adults, as far as jersey collecting and souvenirs of all different sorts. That wasn't so much back then. So hockey cards, sure, had a ball hat with a favorite team, or a T-shirt or something like that.
What was I going to say? Oh yeah, Quebec Nordiques. Will Quebec ever get an NHL team again, you think, or is that ship sailed?
Well, it's so hard to say. Having played there myself back in the day with the Nordique, I know the market. They're hockey crazy there. We have that great rivalry with Montreal, very similar to Calgary Edmonton rivalry. And so, to me, it's a no-brainer. But I'm not Gary Bettman, and I don't have the knowledge of markets and growth and those things. But they do have an arena, brand new, well, fairly new, within a few years, I guess now. And I heard it's state of the art. But I do know the market of people up there. They just love hockey, and it's a long winter in Quebec. So. To me, it's a no-brainer, but again, I don't have the marketing background that the NHL executives do. We're going to be into 32 teams next year when Seattle starts to play, and I don't know how much more the NHL can expand. They've done a great job with expansion. There's so many south of the border franchises that are doing great and have developed. I live fairly close to California. I'm in northern Nevada by Reno, Tahoe, and I know the Bay Area, once the Sharks started up there, I mean, their youth program is very, very big and strong. The Sharks, I think, have put in 3 indoor arenas. I know they've done the same in Southern California. So I'm using that market because it's California and it's a southern state, and we're seeing players drafted and play in the NHL from states like California and Texas, and these southern climates where hockey isn't the traditional game growing up, but it's turning into that for a lot of people nowadays.
Yeah, and there's a couple of weak links, I think. Maybe one of those teams could be transferred just like Atlanta was back to Winnipeg, and one of them could be transferred to Quebec City, and all would be well with the world.
Right.
Yeah. Back to your junior days, Portland Winterhawks. How did you get scouted, or how did that connection happen?
Well, I back in those, it was a little different how junior markets ran back then. I think now they have a draft. Back then it was territorial. So Portland had moved. It was the Edmonton Oil Kings and moved their franchise to Portland, but they still retained that territorial right for the Alberta, especially around Edmonton. So they get first crack at those kids, and so they put me on their list, and then I played on their, I guess their farm team. It was, it's a junior tier 2 in the Alberta Junior Hockey League. I played for the Fort Saskatchewan Traders for a couple of years, and then moved up to, I guess the big club, which would be the Winterhawks, and played a couple of years there, and of course got drafted to the NHL.
And when you're going from the Edmonton area to Portland, what is there some sort of immigration process you kids have to go through?
Well, I can't remember what it was back then. I know there was, because, they're 2 separate countries, but there's some sort of visa that the team gets you. I don't know back then, if that was called a work visa, or because we were young and we weren't really paid. So it was a visa of some sort, but I don't know if it would be what the status is now, where they players have to get a work visa, and the team usually does all that immigration stuff for the players.
Gotcha. So you just signed the paper and off you went because you're 16, 17, footloose and fancy free. This is fun. Here I go off to play hockey in the States. It's great. Don't have to worry about anything else. Let Ken Hodges worry about that stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was a big adjustment going to the States from Canada. I'd never been to the States, and things are very similar, but in some ways very different, especially when it comes to that hockey mentality. So going to Portland is a relatively big city, and I was a relatively small Alberta town type kid. So there was an adjustment, lifestyle adjustment, and moving countries and cities and everything else.
Well, they had hockey for a long time. The Portland Buckaroos in the old professional Western Hockey League, they were there for a long time, so they know hockey in Portland, and apparently now it's a booming success. So on to a more serious note, what was your childhood like? It seems like from reading your book, The Crazy Game, maybe you were in hot water quite often as a kid?
Well, I don't know if you call it hot water. I definitely struggled with some mental health issues that were undiagnosed. Back then, they weren't as knowledgeable or outgoing with where we are today with mental health or mental illness. So I did struggle with anxiety, depression, obsessive compulsive disorder, and of course it was all undiagnosed. My father, I mentioned him early, that he was part of my choice of being a goaltender, and he was a great man, but he was also a abusive alcoholic. That when he drank, things could get really crazy in the house, and I think that was maybe the beginning of a lot of my struggles with the anxiety and depression. I remember, playing on the outdoor rinks and then walking home late at night, and the closer I get to home, the more my anxiety would rise. So did I have mental illness back then? Probably, or was I just, like so many kids, a product of a very unhealthy home and what was going on at home?
I know the feeling. We're talking with Clint Malarchuk, that flippy flop you get in your tummy when you're approaching a situation that you don't necessarily want to be in, even though it's one you've done every day of your life, like go to school or go home. It's just, oh no, what's going to happen today? Is kind of the feelings that I had, and I'm not blaming anybody. That's just the way I was, I think. So now we're talking about Clint Malarchuk, NHL, the Cowboy goalie, 338 NHL games, 12 shutouts, 141 wins, 130 losses, and then there's 45 ties. They don't have that anymore. So that means that 141 and 45, your team came out ahead or with points in more games, way more games than you lost. So how would you rate yourself, all modesty aside, as a goalie? How do you think you were when you were at your peak?
Well, that I flip flopped a lot back and forth with that. I was like everything I went through as a kid. I am, and still to this day, struggle with security insecurity. Just didn't see the real Clint, I guess. But I'm sitting in my spare bedroom, and I've got plaques on the wall, Player of the Week, and I look at that sometime. Player of the Week, Player of the Month in the NHL, and that's when Gretzky and were playing, and I'm like, how did I get Player of the Week, or how did I get Player of the Month in the NHL? I had some seasons where I was up in the top 5 statistically for goaltending statistics. And but I really never thought of myself as a top level goaltender in the NHL. I like I said, I struggled with security issues, insecurity, and but in reflection, looking back, I guess I did okay. I really wonder, and I write about it in my book about the mental health issues that I had. Had I not had them, how good could have I been? Because it really did affect me through my life, and I'm sure affected my play, and being anxious and depressed, and obsessive compulsive disorder, prone to panic attacks, things like that. But on the other hand, once I got healthy, I was just so grateful that I played in the NHL, even with those demons that I struggled with.
How would you compare your style as a goaltender with what we see in the NHL these days?
That's a great question, because the position has really, really evolved. And growing up, we were supposed to stand up, play the angles, and if you went down, even if you made a save, the coach might say, well, why did you go down? You should stand up, play the angles. And so that's, I was part of the evolution in the NHL. I played a stand-up style for probably the first half to 3/4 of my NHL career, and then the butterfly started to evolve, and players, it was okay to go down. And then later on, we had players like Patrick Waugh, Dominic Hasek, who really had no style. I mean, he flip-flopped he stopped the puck, and that's all that mattered. So it really did, the position really did change over the last, 20 years, I would say.
And when I watch old films, let's say, even from the 70s, shots go in that today would have been easily swallowed up by the goalie. The goalie would have been in the right position at the right time, not offering any space anywhere. And compared to back then, nobody would have scored on some of the goalies we've got out there today, compared to the way they played then.
Yeah, you could watch if you were to watch the 60s, 70s, even the early 80s, the position, and watch saves and goals, and then watch today's goaltending, the way it's played now. It's a big difference.
As a goaltending coach, what kind of message did you try to impart to your proteges, I'll call them? How can a goaltender be coached?
Well, having been an NHL goaltending coach, these kids, as we were talking about how the game has evolved, how that position has evolved, they start teaching these kids very, very young the butterfly, and they got these, they're like goalie mills, puppy mills almost, where they go to these camps, and now they do play year round. And so by the time guys get to me being a goalie coach in the NHL, I was, of course, you're always fine tuning. You're always watching video and trying to correct mistakes, and that's just part of the game. It's a game of mistakes. But I was really in tune with the mental side of the game, how goaltenders prepared, how they handled pressure, how they handled letting in a bad goal and not letting it bother them, or having a bad game and bouncing back with a great game. So I was all about the mental aspect of the game, developing mental strengths to be consistent and bring your best game, 99.9% of the time, if that's possible.
And we can't talk to Clint Malarchuk without talking about a few couple of incidents that are embedded in most people's mind. So take us back to that night in Buffalo in 1989 when you and Skateblade had what could have been a fatal encounter. Do you still remember that?
Oh yes, vividly. I still once in a while have flashbacks or nightmares about that. I'll wake up straight up in bed, and so it definitely caused me PTSD, which was undiagnosed back then. I came back in 10 days or 11 days or whatever it was. As soon as the stitches came out, you almost bleed to death on the ice and almost die. Prepare for death, basically. So you develop trauma, and it was never, I never saw a counselor or didn't even think about it. I don't even know if they had. It was never brought up, and I never thought of it either. So over the years, that PTSD did develop into some major problems for me, and it was probably 20 years undiagnosed before, and I write about in my book about my suicide attempt, which. That's what PTSD will do to people. They become so anxious, depressed, or, panic attack, whatever it might be, whatever form of PTSD they have, a lot of us do become suicidal.
And in our family, our son has successfully survived suicide attempts, so at least 3 times that I know of. So, and he's still hanging in there. He's the one who's in Regina working at the care home, so he has a lot of good things going.
He's probably got a lot of compassion and empathy, and that's why he is a frontline worker doing what he does, because he knows what it's like to struggle mentally. And I can certainly relate to, him and I could probably sit down and have a great discussion. But, I think with this pandemic, we're going to see we already have a huge rise in suicides, overdoses, addiction. And, I think just with all the stress that pandemic has brought with people for financial reasons, for isolation reasons, for, a lot of mental health reasons, it's going to be... it's going to get worse, I think, before it gets better. And I hate to say that, but it's probably the fact. The longer this pandemic goes on, the more people are going to struggle.
And we're with Clint Malarchuk today. Now, you have a book. It's The Crazy Game, but it's also a matter of inches. That's the same book with 2 different titles?
Yes, it's the same book. I wrote the book and published it in Canada. HarperCollins, and then a publishing company in the U.S. wanted to pick it up, and they didn't like the name Crazy Game, so they really wanted to go with a different name, and they came up with A Matter of Inches because my story of almost dying 3 times, it's been a matter of inches. So, yeah, it's the same book, just two different titles, one for Canada and one for U.S.
So if you're looking for a Clint Malarchuk book and you find one with one title and then you get it and then you see another one, well, guess what? It'll be the same. So take them both. But, why not? Okay, you've had an interesting story, to say the least. What happened October 7th, 2008? The day you shot yourself and lived to tell about it.
Yeah, well, that was the 20 years of undiagnosed PTSD that things just got worse, and I was self-medicating with alcohol too, and so there's a huge correlation between mental illness and addiction. I mean, it's a shame that it happens, but people, like for me, alcohol would help me with my OCD or my depression or my anxiety, but it also worsened the levels that I had to increase to get the relief that the alcohol would give me. So the combination of what I was going through with the PTSD, undiagnosed again, and the self-medicating with alcohol led to a day of desperation, of hopelessness, of total confusion, and I'm sure the alcohol didn't help in my choice at that moment to randomly pick up a gun and put it under my chin and pull the trigger.
And you pulled the trigger and the bullet went off and then it missed everything, apparently, right?
Well, yeah.
Missed everything vital, I guess.
Yeah. It's lodged in my skull even to this day. And it's a miracle that it missed, went straight up through my, my chin, my upper palate, my sinus, and, it didn't take out an eye. Well, it didn't kill me, I think the fact that it ricocheted off my teeth and knocked out a couple teeth, I think the fact that may have slowed the impact of the bullet to the skull may have saved me. There's a lot of reasons. I mean, there's definitely, I should have died in 89 from the jugular vein being severed in the game. And, there's another time I almost died, had a reaction to painkillers. And my heart stopped, and then the suicide attempt. So there's a reason I'm here, and there's a reason that I do what I do today. Much like your son, you mentioned, I'm not on the front lines of what he does, but I'm a mental health advocate. I speak publicly around the country, U.S. and Canada, about my journey and how I survived and how I tried to deal and work through my problems. I have a plan that I share with people on keeping my, lack of a better word, sanity, or just my OCD, my depression, anxiety, panic, in control, in check, And I share what I've gone through, but I also share where I am today and trying to lead. I guess a very, I'm not going to lie, I'm really struggling, as so many people are, with the pandemic and the reasons I stated that, whether it be financial or isolation or, causing people to be anxious, depressed, worried, insomnia. I'm experiencing a lot of that today, but in a normal Clint Malarchuk, the last, 10 years, I've actually been doing very well with my mental health and my recovery. And so that's why I speak about it and what I do to keep my my balance in life.
And there's a statement you made at one of the video clips I saw. People fear the things they don't understand. And I'm assuming, of course, that leads right into people still, even after all of this, even in 2020, 2021, they still don't a lot of people quite grasp what a mental illness is and how it can affect people and lead to problems that on the surface seem like the problem would be drinking, but no, the problem is what caused the person to do the drinking. And so you have to get back to the roots of those situations and try to work yourself through that. So that's the message you're trying to spread to the world?
Well, that statement, people we all know physical pain because we've all had, something happens, it hurts. and it's physical. So we all understand physical pain, but not everybody understands mental illness or mental anguish or emotional distress. I mean, we've all gone through things that have been emotional and hurtful and that, but to be clinically depressed or clinically diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder, panic attacks, or depression, I mean, not everybody can relate to that. And it's an invisible thing. You can't see it because we're great actors. We don't walk around. People don't know what's going through our head and through our body and you know, the anxiety. It's not visible. So for some people, it's very hard to understand. And unless you've had it or experienced it at some level, mental illness is very hard to explain. And, you know, unless you've walked a mile in our shoes, it's hard for people to understand.
And we're talking with Clint Malarchuk today here, the Cowboy Goalie. As you know, the book is The Crazy Game in Canada or A Matter of Inches in the U.S. I'm sure you can find it in one place or another or both. Before we go, Clint, what's the message that you want to pass on to people if they don't take anything else from this chat? What do you hope they will take from it?
Well, I think just with our conversation, we've kind of stressed that more than ever, our world is different, and more than ever, people are experiencing mental health problems or emotional distress, and that we're all in it together. Sometimes I can't sleep and I'm worried, but then I think, you know what, Clint, you're not alone. There's a lot more people now than ever before that are struggling with the same worry, anxieties, and to people to know that they're not alone, that we're all in this together, and that to be positive, you know, they're going to come up with a vaccine. It's just a matter of when, and I don't know if we'll ever return to the same world that we've experienced over the years. It may never be to the same normality that we're used to, but it will get better. And, you know, people are going to recover financially. People are going to recover emotionally. And if you're really struggling or in that dark place, just understand you're not alone. And we do have suicide hotlines. We have counseling and therapists and medications. And, you know, be proactive. Don't think that there's not help out there, because there is.
And on that note, don't think there isn't any help out there, because there is. If you need help, go ask for help. And you'd be surprised how many people will rally around you when you just say those magic words like, you know what, I need help. So Clint Malarchuk, thank you very much for being with us today. And let's hope the next 6 or 8 months turn into something a lot better for a lot of us. Thank you very much.
Yeah. My pleasure. My prayers are with everybody. Thank you.
Thank you for visiting with us today. This is Talking Books and Stuff with Dennis Rimmer. Contact him at dennis@talkingbooks.tk. Thank you, and may all the good news be yours. Oh, and don't forget to check out his book, The Great Canadian Notebook, available across Canada and at amazon.ca.